Hey, it's Kai here from Family Wheels with another car review for your growing family. And before we get to what's new on the reigning North American Car of the Year, make sure you subscribe to the channel on the bottom right down here to catch all our reviews every single week. But this is the 2020 Genesis G70. And there's been a lot talked about this car for over 12 months now, and with very good reason. And it's good timing too, because we test drove the BMW M340i just a couple of weeks ago. So we can make some comparisons and also help you decide if this is the right car for you and your family. It's the 2020 Genesis G70 this week on Family Wheels.
3, 2, 1, blackout!
How was that?
How about let's do it again?
So why is this car so talked about, and why did it get the North American Car of the Year? Well, you've got a quality luxury sports sedan at an outstanding price. You've got an amazing power plant, which we'll get to. The chassis, the handling, the option of adaptive suspension, performance brakes, nice smooth transmission, and a bunch of driver assistance programs. But there is one key area that this car lacks compared to that M340i. We're going to get to that in a second after we learn more about that sensational power plant. So you can start with the 2-litre turbocharged engine putting out 252 horsepower, and that sits pretty much in line with the BMW 330i, which has got 255. Or you've got what's in this one. It's a 3.3-litre twin turbo V6 putting out 362 horsepower and 376 pound-feet of torque. And you've got the 8-speed automatic transmission through every trim except for the 2-litre sport trim, which comes with the 6-speed manual. It's virtually the only manual left within the entire sector of the sports sedans like this, and they've held on to it even though it only held up about 4% of sales in 2019. And that particular one, the 2-litre 6-speed, also only comes with 2-wheel drive, the rear-wheel drive. Now in Canada, every single other trim is standard all-wheel drive with the H-Track, whereas in the States you can choose between 2-wheel and all-wheel drive. That's a very common practice in the States, and that'll cost you an extra $2,000 if you want the H-Track all-wheel drive, which has been terrific. Like this week it's been really, really wet. I've not had much of a problem at all with traction, even when using the launch control with the kids in the back with the kids pep test. Now by comparison, let's compare that to how they went in the BMW. They absolutely loved it. What is new for 2020 though? Only very minor changes and shifts because it's virtually a brand new car. 2019 was the first year. So you have a slightly different design on the 18-inch wheels. You can also get a 19-inch wheels, which is on this one. There's also a brown interior option, which is on this one. This is the Napa leather. It is the diamond quilted. It is absolutely sensational. It's heated and vented, and also got the rear heated seats as well. The 2-litre sport trim also gets the Brembo performance brakes now, and the power liftgate on the trunk is available on a few more trim levels. It's also got proximity activation, which I couldn't always get it to work. Sometimes when I wanted it to work it wouldn't, and other times when I didn't want it to work the trunk popped up. So maybe that's something you get used to if you have this car a little bit longer. But let's talk about that trunk, because that is one of the areas in which this car struggles against the BMW M340i and also other competitors. Apple CarPlay standard, by the way, and Android Auto. So this trunk has 297 litres of cargo space, which is 10.5 cubic feet. By comparison, the BMW M340i has 480 litres, which is 17 cubic feet. That is a huge difference, and that is one of the things that you'll notice immediately. This car feels so much smaller on the interior compared to that BMW, even though a lot of the specs are exactly the same. If you look at the dimensions, the wheelbase, the length, the width, the passenger legroom and headspace, it's just within millimeters of each other. But as soon as you get into this car, you realize that this car feels so much tighter. It does pass our standardized test of the stroller, a soccer ball, 2 bags of groceries and a camera bag and a diaper bag, no problems. It's, you know, a little bit tight, but the BMW had so much more space to it. And that continues when you got the kids seats in the back. So our rear-facing kids test, we on purpose used the biggest car seat we can find, which is the Collect Flow. That in rear-facing, I wouldn't recommend it. I'd go for something like the Diono so you can fit the kids in much more comfortably, because if you have that Collect rear-facing facing, you've got virtually no space left back here. You can even see when my son is forward facing on that Diono, the rear leg room is reasonably tight, and for an adult, while those bucket seats in the back are super comfortable, leg space is certainly not at a premium. Also, the door arches you'll be able to see, so they're at a bit more of an angle down on that back and also at the front. So when you're trying to get kids in and out, you don't have that sort of head space and shoulder space to try and strap them in. And the BMW was actually really good at that. They'd kept their door arches much more wider and higher, longer, so you can actually get the kids in and out a little bit more comfortably. Also, the kids seat anchor was really deep on this. It's got the ISOFIX, it's got this spring-loaded cap, which is actually really nice. But then the anchor point itself is like nearly 2 inches down, so it's a little bit more difficult to get the anchors in and out on the car seat. The door trimmings in the rear, there's really no room for anything in those doors. Even in the front is really tight. The glove box is pretty decent size, and so is this. But even the pockets on the back of the front seats is just the netting, so you can't really fit a lot in there. And yeah, that's just one thing that it lacks behind. Not only just space and room on the inside, but practical storage solutions. Okay, let's talk about pricing just as we hit the road here. We're going to check out the engine modes and we'll go through the interior and also the infotainment system. So pricing, this is what makes this car so amazing. This will start at $46,000 in Canada, and then it will go right up to this one, which is the 3.3 litre V6, obviously, with the top trim, which is $58,000. All that all-wheel drive luxury sports sedan with everything on it for $58,000. That is terrific value. In the States, it will start at around $36,000. That's the 2 litre with rear wheel drive, and then it will go right up to the all-wheel drive in the 3.3 litre for just over $45,000. Now, if we are comparing the BMW M340i, which granted had a few niceties on it, that was $72,000 Canadian, and that one started at $62,000. That's what makes this car such amazing value. However, I will go out and say that there are actually many ways that I found that BMW M340i a much better car, much better. And not just from a performance driving perspective, but also from a family perspective as well. To begin with, in terms of that BMW engine, you were always aware of the fact that that was an absolute beast, whether it be the engine noise, the exhaust sound, the handling of it. Then you're going into Sport Plus mode. That thing was absolutely incredible. And while this is no slouch and it's absolutely terrific, you just don't get that same feeling that this thing could just unleash hell at any given moment. Maybe I'm spoiled from driving these cars all the time. The exhaust sound is somewhat disappointing on this car as well. They actually pipe it through the speakers a little bit. You can turn it off on the infotainment system, but even when you do have it on sport, this car sounds nowhere near as aggressive as that BMW when it's clicked into sport mode. But the good news is, it's still an amazing car to drive around in and terrific performance. It just doesn't have that little edge to it, which is also what made the fuel economy numbers really interesting. So the fuel economy is actually not very good. It's 12 litres per 100 kilometers or 20 miles per gallon. Now, compared to that BMW that had more horsepower, it was 22 miles per gallon or around 10 litres per 100 kilometers. So that's actually a pretty big difference, especially when you consider that that BMW had a bit more up and go. But your driving modes, maybe it's got to do with which one they'd set it on when they were doing all that, but this driving mode, it starts at Smart, then you go to Eco. I kept in Comfort most of the time. That's your general driving. It's like very nice mode. If you need to kick back some gears, it's reasonably responsive as well. I'll take off right now in Eco and see how we go. So this is like one of the slowest. That's Eco. It's so much fun. Then you got Sport and Custom. So in your infotainment system, just like with many, you can set it up however you like. Your steering, your suspension, and your performance of your engine. Now that BMW was really stiff in the steering, especially in sport and everything. This doesn't tighten things up to that degree. So in terms of being, I guess, a better daily driver and a bit more toned back, this is certainly that. That BMW had a bit more up and go, but was still very tame in its lower driving settings. By the way, this doesn't actually park it for you. This won't do the automatic parking, even perpendicular. The BMW had that one. That would have been a nice feature to have, but there's a couple of other things which we'll get to in a second. The center console is very unique. I like the fact that you've got 2 settings on your heated steering wheel and not just the one. 3 for the seat, and they're vented. Above that, you've got your media and your navigation buttons. You don't have your control of your infotainment system with anything other than the touch up here and these couple of buttons here. And the infotainment system is a bit of a letdown, to be honest. The graphics aren't terrific. However, this does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard, and they're free. They won't charge you for them. But that was one area that the BMW was miles and miles ahead. By the way, this does have wireless charging, which is awesome. It sits nice and comfortably down there. You'll have to make sure you have a phone that doesn't have an aluminum back to it, which mine does, so it doesn't work. But the interior is a place where this falls a little bit behind, and you can sort of see the different price point by all means. Just the little last finishing touches on the trim, like the top plastics here. You've got leather on the dash up here and everything, but just the finishings on your buttons and your climate control, the middle of the steering wheel, it just shows that a little bit. But it's not to say that this is not an impressive interior and it's not comfortable, because it absolutely is. And even the what's the sound system? It's Lexicon. Yeah, the premium sound system is absolutely wonderful. I love that. All the trim levels have blind spot warning and also rear cross traffic warning. The 2-litre sport trim is an interesting one. That doesn't have a bunch of things. So virtually every other trim level has your other things, like your forward collision mitigation with braking, your lane keeping assist. Now, being a part of the Hyundai family, by the way, get in a fight in the comments about how to say Hyundai properly. This actually has one of the best lane keeping assist programs that you can get. It makes lots of little adjustments as you're going along, and because you get all those driver safety programs like the collision warning, the pedestrian detection, the blind spot warning, the lane keeping assist with departure warning, because you have all that, that actually does give it the top safety pick plus from the IAHS. That is if you have the LED projector headlamps. If you just have the halogen, it doesn't get the top safety pick plus. That's pretty common in so many different makes and models. But yeah, if you have that, then you have a safe, reliable, performing, relatively cheap car. So that's the 2020 Genesis G70. I've made a bunch of comparisons to that M340i, which I feel like is the superior vehicle in terms of the performance of it, the practicality on the inside in terms of space for a family, but also just the finishings, like the infotainment system, everything else around it. However, the one that we drove was $14,000 more than the top trim on this one. The blind spot warning works, by the way. So if you found this review useful, make sure you give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you can catch new reviews every single week. Till next time, from Family Wheels, I'm Kai.